Hello guys, this is Tinro. Welcome to episode 5 of KSP Science Exploration Adventure. Today we are going to start by talking a little bit about staging and ascent profiles, and we'll take it from there. You can see this rocket has 3 stages, 4,842 meters a second potential delta V, and if you're not familiar with how this is broken down, each of these stages on the left is the delta V for that stage, and then the cumulative is on the right. So if I take off this stage, you can see that I've got 1,032 delta V here. If I add this second stage, it adds 2,084 delta V, totaling up to 3,116, and then the final stage adds up like that. So based off of knowing your limitations, you can design your rocket to do what you want. For example, I know that it takes me about 3.4 thousand delta V to get to orbit with these 1.25 meter parts. So if I had a satellite that I wanted to send to a planet, I'd know that I'd want the lifter to be about 3.4k delta V so that I'd get there. Let's take a look at a different build. Here's a rather large rocket that I built several years ago when I was playing in the alpha. The max engine sizes were 2.5 meters and the strongest engine was the full sail, so a lot's changed since then, but this image is a good reminder of two things. One, if you put your mind to it, you can do anything, like build this rocket, which actually did get to orbit with like 21,000 delta V left over to explore the galaxy. And the good strong point for number 2 is sometimes it's better to give up and start from scratch, because looking at this, you should be able to tell that I probably could have done better if I just started over instead of just slapping on more and more and more and more to make something work that wasn't actually working. But the whole thing did work out. I'm kind of proud that it happened. It took like 45 minutes because of slow motion for slow frames, but here it is. Don't do it. Now, when it comes to efficiency, there's 2 types of efficiency. There's the efficiency that you have natively with the way your rocket is designed, and then also with your profile. You can see that I have a potential 3.18k delta V here with my skipper engine. If I were to add a poodle instead, this is a much more efficient engine, so 318 to 3808. You'd see that my thrust to weight drops down to 1.07. If I change this to atmospheric, it's actually 0.27, so I wouldn't be able to get anywhere. So there's a balance between being able to accomplish something and being efficient. There are times where both the less efficient with the higher thrust to weight and the more efficient with the lower thrust to weight are options, and there are reasons why you might choose one over the other. If you're in the upper atmosphere, it makes more sense to use the more efficient one, whereas if you're starting out, it makes more sense to use the higher thrust to weight, even if it's less efficient. This rocket here, you can see, if I change this back from atmospheric to regular, 3.180 delta V. So if I have this thrust limiter all the way up at 100%, you can see that my thrust to weight for when I start will be 2.31. So 2.3 Gs at launch. Now, if I maintain 100% burn all the way up, if I shoot straight up and then I pitch straight over to make a right angle, if I try to get to orbit like that, this vessel will only get up to about 1,525 horizontal velocity, so it won't make it to orbit. Doing the same thing, if I throttle this down to 60.5, so that I have 1.4 thrust to weight, and I do the same thing. I go straight up, get to about 80,000 meters, and then pitch to the side and burn the rest of my fuel. I'll only get up to 1,192. Now the reason for that is because if I go slower, I spend more time in the atmosphere and I spend more time fighting gravity. So I'm spending more fuel with a lower thrust to weight. That's something that you don't necessarily have to account for it, because it's going to be a couple hundred delta V, and if it doesn't matter to you, that's okay. But the proper way to get to orbit is to actually go at an angle, because if you think about the example of going straight up and then pitching straight over, you're essentially making a triangle. And if you add the lengths of two sides, they will always be longer than the hypotenuse that connects those 2 points. So it's more efficient to go to the side. But then you also have to take into account how thick the atmosphere is. So when you start out, you'll want to pitch over pretty much immediately and start gaining some vertical speed. And then as you get higher in the atmosphere, you can pitch over more and more until you finally get up to where you're going. What you want is about 2,000 meters a second at around 70 to 80,000 meters. So you want to keep an eye on your time to apoapsis and your apoapsis height when you're going up, because if your apoapsis height isn't going up and you're going about 1,800 meters a second, you're only going to get about 50,000 meters high, you didn't burn high enough, and you're probably going to burn up in the atmosphere, just run out of fuel and fall back down. So without further ado, let's actually launch a rocket. With the science that I unlocked by sending my Kerbals to Iota prior to stranding them, I was able to unlock additional parts. I have a new science part here in the fairing. The fairing is a structural component that I can shape to help for aerodynamics, so I have a probe in here that will be protected by this shell, and it won't be exposing its rough edges and causing drag, as well as nose cones and better parachutes. The way this is set up, this rocket is a 2x2, it's not a 4x4, or a 4x symmetry, so I'm going to be shedding these tanks first, these tanks second, and then the central column will continue on. And I'm using the decouplers here with crossfeed on so that I can use this central engine with the fuel from these exterior tanks. So let's send this to space. You can see all three of those are going. These are the LV-30s on the sides, so I'm using them for an extra punch at start. They're less efficient, but it'll get me out of the lower atmosphere faster, and I'm able to pitch them over because I have this gimbling engine in the middle. If I didn't have this gimbling engine active, I wouldn't really be able to pitch this over. So what I'm going to try to do for this launch is pay attention to this so I can jettison this when it's empty, because I don't want to carry it around. So I'm going to try to keep my vertical speed below 350. And I have to turn around so that these tanks will fall to gravity instead of colliding with my rocket. And I also need to pay attention to this tank because it's doing the same thing. The crossfeed, the fuel crossfeed between the decouplers is both ways. So even when these tanks run out of fuel, they would continue burning by pulling fuel from this central column. So doing that maneuver, I wasn't paying attention, and I exceeded the limit that I was trying to set for myself, but it's kind of a soft cap. It doesn't really matter. But you can see I'm just barely exiting mid-atmosphere, and I'm pitched over really far. I'm starting to pick up horizontal speed. My horizontal speed is almost 900, and my vertical speed is dropping. I want to keep my vertical speed up some, because my apoapsis height needs to get up to at least 70,000 for me to get out of the atmosphere. And you can see that my time to apoapsis is increasing, because my orbit is continuing to be pushed further out from where I am as I pick up the horizontal speed. And these are just effects. You don't see any bars telling me that I'm about to explode or I'm getting too hot, so I'm not too worried about that. I will be dropping to a less powerful engine in the next stage, so I'm kind of hanging above my prograde a little. You can see that there's not anywhere near as much thrust coming out of this Vesta. But I have about 300 meters a second to go, and my apoapsis height still needs to increase by about 20,000, so I'm going to stay pitched up a little. Let that continue to climb with my vertical speed. can just go more horizontal. And I'm going to take this up to about 80,000. Now I'm in the atmosphere, so I'm going to slow down. My apoapsis will drop, my vertical speed will drop, and my horizontal speed will start dropping. But it's not going to be dropping enough that I'm not going to be around 80,000 meters by the time I get to my apoapsis in 4 minutes. So what that means is, even though my horizontal speed is above 2,000 meters a second right now, it's going to decline, and I'm going to have to build it back up a little. Pressure at 50,000 is, I think it's around 5. So I don't really want to shed my protective shell yet. I'm going to wait a couple thousand more meters. I think by 60,000 meters it drops to 2. So I'll get rid of that. And here you can see the lander that I'm sending to Iota. I have a wide profile with these tanks on the side connected with decouplers. I'm using lights to kind of help for landing because I don't have landing legs. So if I landed on an incline that was between these two tanks, these might help prevent me from tipping over. You can see the solar panel starting to pick up some heat. It's looking like I'm going to have to spend about 100 delta V to finish this orbit. I haven't actually found the real reaction wheels in engineering tech tree. I don't know where they're hiding. I'm tempted to give up and just cheat to find out where the heck they are, because I want them, and they're not anywhere that seems to make sense to me. So the reason that I'm sending this to Iota is because science is what I need to progress my space program. It would be nice to rescue the Kerbals, but they're kind of a secondary priority. And these little markers say that by the time at this point on my orbit, the moon will be over here. So I'm not anywhere near getting an encounter with that. So you can see they're getting kind of closer together, further apart. Okay, so there's an encounter. In the past, what I've done is I've focused my maneuvers on getting as close as possible to the body, regardless of whether or not my orbit becomes larger on the way out, meaning that I've been possibly picking up speed when I could be doing a different maneuver that gets me farther away, but I have less to burn. I'm not sure which one's actually more efficient. But from here, I'm going to try not getting too much speed. Like you can see that my inside orbit is this orange line, and then my exit one green is larger. That means that I'm picking up some speed. So I'm coming up behind the planet. That's what that means. So that's the burn I want. 42 seconds in about 18 minutes. So that will be more than my current stage. So it was intended for me to shed this stage on the way over, but I forgot about the plane change. When I did my calculations, I thought I'd have about 1,000 delta V left. So I have about half of that now. I added some lights to this one, so you can kind of see what's going on if I end up in a dark spot. And here's my lander. It's a tiny little thing. I'm hoping to hit all 5 biomes, but for this contract, I only need to land in 3. And there was a big change in my velocity now that I lost the Vesta, so I want to pay a little closer attention to this maneuver. before I go too far, I do want to make sure that my probe core hibernation on warp is auto, and I want to extend at least one of my antennas so that I don't lose contact. Now the sun is back there, which means I won't be able to really aim toward it for solar power until I get around the planet. Not that I'm going to be using much energy. With hibernation on warp. After I kill my speed. So this is a lot easier to control without that weight on the end. Sun is that way. So I'll just set this up. Analyze telemetry. Okay, so I used to think that flight telemetry was something that you accumulated. I guess you have to transmit it each time, so I'll transmit the flight telemetry. And then I have a magnetometer. I don't have science necessarily for everything with that yet. An accurate reading of the local magnetic field is recorded. I think a lot of these are going to be generic. But I'm all set to warp to my encounter with Iota. Okay, high orbit over Iota. I've got some new science. Telemetry. 1 science for that. Pressure data, I've already done this. Magnetometer, 5 science. There isn't a thermometer one, because even though I have a thermometer, the last time I went by, I think I got it all. So I'm going to get captured and then burn along the edge, not behind the planet, because I won't be able to control my craft, so that I land on the light side, so that you guys can see what's going on. Okay, periapsis now, 3,000. That should be above terrain. Yeah, based off of the current position of Gale, I can't really land on the light side, and I don't want to make you guys watch that, so I'm gonna change that. Okay, science, analyze telemetry, 1.5. Temperature, I have. Magnetometer is new, 7.5 science. I'm currently in the highlands. This terrain doesn't look too rough, but it is fairly hilly. So I'm gonna cancel out my horizontal speed. I'm not following my retrograde, because I don't want to cancel out my negative vertical speed because I want to keep falling. So I'm going to keep aimed at the horizon and focus on just the horizontal speed, and I'll change this to surface. I'll try and gauge how steep it is when I get closer. I'm not a fan of suicide burns, which is what this would be if I waited until I had 8 seconds. So I'm going to lead it just a little and spread it out. This isn't looking too bad. 18 meters a second. I want to probably try and get it down around 2. Doesn't look like I'll tip over. 6 seconds. Where's my shadow? There it is. Nope, don't tip over. Alright, successful landing in the highlands. Let's get some science, telemetry. Temperature. Yep, still cold. Maybe its cushy nature has some involvement. So that is some specific science. That's the stuff that I want to see. It looks like they might not just have that for D orbitals packs. So 16 science from that. Temperature. I just sent that one, didn't I? Let me set that. Magnetometer. 10 science. Ooh, pressure. 24 science. That's a good amount. So now, to find something that isn't the highlands. I think the best thing to do might be to move along a polar area and just skim across. That crater there looks like it might be something. So I'll burn upward. And then see if I can figure out. That's kind of it. This way, okay. There it is. Now I can see it on the nav ball, it'll be a lot easier to get to. Now I'm just going to skim across the surface, picking up some horizontal and vertical speed. I don't want to go too far because I want to be able to cancel it to land in new biomes that I might encounter. But you can see I don't have very much vertical speed right now. So I'll pump that up so I can just keep floating over. Skids, new biome. Got 60 meters a second of delta V. Speed to cancel out. Back in the highlands. So I'm gonna try and go back there. Going 11 meters a second the other way. I can't tell what the skids look like, so I'm relying on engineer to tell me when I'm there. Got some horizontal speed to kill off there, so a little wobbly. Still in the skids, new science, telemetry, 2 science, temperature 16 science. You get scattered readings. Apparently some dust is cold and some is hot. Pressure data, generic 24 science, and then magnetometer 10 science. No! I really can't wait to get landing legs that have some shock absorbing capabilities. And RCS to just maintain my position when I land. Telemetry, 2 science. Temperature. Generic. Pressure, 24 science. Magnetometer, 10 science. So I've got skids, high, and mid. That means that there's lowlands and droops to find. Lowlands could be any of these valleys. Droops, maybe this brown stuff. If I don't find anything on my way to this brown area, I'll probably go toward one of the poles, because it could be one of these flat or divoted areas up here, or looks like they have about the same stuff on the bottom too. So the poles look a little different than the rest of the planet or the moon. Oh, those are done. Turn this fuel back on. Jettison those. Looks like I should burn a little more this way. Okay, these are some lowlands. It's an okay landing. Telemetry, 2 science. I could have guessed that. Temperature, 16 science. Pressure, 24 science. Magnetometer, 10 science. So far this trip, since I started with 0, we're up 230 science. And we've got some firsts, probably. New funds from science. Completed the contract. New funds from science. Oh, we hadn't actually orbited or suborbited. Iota, landing on the surface. Those are new. New strategies available. Okay. 80%, 92%. Not too bad for recovery on those. Now, what the heck is a droop? Oh, I guess that's it. Oh no. It happened again. Are you kidding me? I'm perpendicular to the sun with my solar panels. There is a fix for that. I could have put a capacitor on my vessel. Or I should have always... I guess if I disable... I used to be able to disable batteries and then re-enable them, but can't do that anymore. So I think this mission is basically over. Well, I didn't land in the droops, but now I have a better idea of where they are. That leaves something to be collected by the actual landing crew when I send them later on. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Future plans, we have to rescue Bob and Val and get ready to start looking for new planets. So I'll be doing those shortly. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.